But more than anything, my very first thanks goes to Joseph Voth. Thank you for organizing this and the remixed reading series. I'm so very, very grateful to you. Courtney Hughes, thank you too for your organization. Thank you to the Full Circle Brewery. Normally I have to have a flask in my bag, but now we're all out there. I would like for you all to support the Full Circle Brewery and take a toast and a drink right now. Thank you too to Corinne Clegg Hales and John Hales for hosting me, to Brenda Venecia for hosting me, and Jefferson Beavers, thank you. To the artists, Roy Zooberry, you write exactly from where the fuck poetry should come from. Thank you. Thank you for your poetry. To the band Old Glue, I'm sorry if this sounds super pervy, but I would like to sniff you. And then to the MFA program at Fresno State, thank you for giving me everything and giving me poetry. I love to come home. Thank you. So I teach at the University of Texas at El Paso. It's on the border of Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, and I live in El Paso, Texas. From my house and from my office, I can see the desert which rolls. It's the same desert, right? Whether you're on the US side or the Mexican side. And I can see the desert which rolls into Mexico and into Juarez. The problem is, a number of years ago when I first moved there, we used to cross the border a bunch, and then the drug wars came. It was to the point where the CNN called Juarez the deadliest city in the world. In a span of 5 years, about 48,000 people were murdered. My students would come to class and say, I'm sorry I couldn't show up for 5 weeks. Blah, blah, blah was kidnapped, blah, blah, blah was kidnapped. All of us knew someone who died. This book is in many ways about that. That's one of the major things. So when it says for want of water, it's about wanting water in the desert. And the title poem is about an immigration of this boy trying to cross the desert. I'll read it in a little bit and talk about it more later, but he's trying to cross the desert. And so the reason that the book's cover pushes across the page like that is because the poem pushes across the page for that migration. But after the war ended, and there's still remnants of the war was between drug cartels for access to the United States. So this bullshit that you hear about the Mexican border being dangerous is exactly dangerous because of access to the United States, right? The drug war existed precisely because people, as brown bodies were falling in the South, bodies in the US were falling to drug and pleasure. Sea change. Morning and light seams through Juarez, its homes like pearls, El Paso rippling in the dark. Today I understand the fact of my separate body, how it tides to its own center, my skin crumbling from thirst and touch. The sun hangs like a bulb in corridor, one city opening to another. When did my heart become a boat? The desert, the moving chart of my palm. And when did pain invert the sky to glaucous sea, each home on each hill, rocking? I would give my lips to a soldier if only he would take them as sextant, our mouths an arc, my tongue the telescoping sight between. Below such light, the measure of boys swimming cobbles, their stomachs dripping wild stamen. See how they are clutching to their guns like lovers, as if the metal could bear them. Morning, and still in umbra, my dog and I walk, her tongue a swinging rudder. So, thanks for the wooer. Oh, it's Joseph. It's Professor Voth. Extra credit. So, the title of this book of poems is For Want of Water and Other Poems. And I was telling you about migration, right? The border is an artificial concept. We get that, right? Like the Chihuahuan Desert is one vast amount of land, and the border was constructed politically and artificially to divide a land that is actually indivisible. The wonderful thing about the desert is that the landscape is shifting and changing at any time. But anyway, so I was very lucky. I I'm very lucky with this press. I don't know if you guys know James Baldwin. James Baldwin's Notes of a Native Son, that's my press. Martin Luther King Jr., that's my press. And they decided to paint this little thing for the cover, which matches the poem's form, which is pushing across the page. A few things here. This poem is based on a true story, a news story, of a boy who tried to migrate from Mexico to the United States. And on the way there, it's a tough desert, right? On the way there, his mother kind of fell down and he had to drag her body across the desert. And when he ended up in the United States, in my part of the desert, my desert, people made calls when they saw him, right? But they made calls to the INS. For want of water, an ant will drown himself, his body submerging into ease, his mandibles, head, antennae baptized. How lovely to lose your senses to the cup of your want. A boy drags his mother's body across the desert, her fluids rising to heaven in order to quench her skin. How divine her body must have looked, clutched at the ankles, her arms reaching out in exultation, her head stippled in rings of sand and blood as he walked with her, slowly, her fallen and moving shape the fork of a divining rod, her body shaking with each of his steps and for water, shaking to find that deep and secret tributary. I have dreams of letting go of water, of waking my lover to a bed of my urine, as my brother did to me, his thin limbs shaking to discover the shame of his inside self. And what did we know that to have an inside wet enough to free was luxury? The boy walks with his mother. He is only 13. The age I learned to stroke on the toilet the blood off my fingers, and he cannot cry, because to cry would mean the waste of his own wetness. To cry would mean to stop, to think, to differentiate the liquids moving down his face. To cry would mean to cry. So he goes on, and this is a common story. The boy is not a boy now, but every boy we have ever known. People find him. They help him to lift his mother onto their hands, their necks. They lift her to their own dark and desperate dryness. And they make it, yes, when they make it over the border to a mall parking lot, they lay her down. They fall with her body as a clump of bodies behind a city dumpster. And people make calls from behind windows, not to the immigrants with the dying core, but to the police, who come with their handcuffs and call her dead. No, to call would be to give her life a name, roundness to where there are now only angles. To call would be to remember all the other times that he has called for her. And the boy plugs his ears, shakes his head, doesn't know that he cannot physically produce tears anymore. Such thirst can rid us of these symbols. Only that now there are mouths around him calling other names as men run and other men give chase. Because how much do you need to give up in order to stay? A boy, a mother, your land and inner land? Nothing. Nothing can be given. And he will remember nothing as he sits in a cell waiting for his sister to come to release him from his cellular pain. He will only remember water, that want for the clouds to let go their rain, and how seeing them dropping, he kept pulling forward, their bodies steady towards that dark, uneven line. Do you guys know about Moulin Rouge? Okay. Lullido is in Paris. It's another version of Moulin Rouge. Leaving the university gym, September, and the great stillness of moonless night and cooling air, the city in blue pockets in the hills, and just under your hands, the current of what's forgotten. All week long, while you're running or reading, your forefinger blurring the type, one season was slipping into another, as lovers weave themselves across a bed, odor of yeast from the beer bread lifting through the oven, the dog's pad cracked, and in class, you are watching one student blink at another. There's a time to believe in love, you'd thought, watching her rub her arm hair and him shift in his shirt. But then you believe all things end, and you tried so carefully to explain what Marilyn Hacker meant, how we wake to ourselves exhausted in the late, before you thought better about it, staring down the rows and cited the fused limbs and unlettered power instead. The poem's words comet tails on blackboard. Now you are finally leaving campus, content this time your heart has bettered the howl for sugar, your body hot from the work of itself when you push through the glass door into fall, and you remember a draft which was just like this once, when, past the dorm curfew, Tim was clutching your elbows beside a lake, the air cricket thick, Cassiopeia encrusted in her collar. There is no loneliness as knowing. Years later, when you were drunk yet again at Lulido, swimming the booth, the waiter, cloudy in his captain's suit, sat with you. The gold enamel dancer was still mounting her white horse. He poured the champagne. You sipped it softly. Their muscles erupted into the shivering other as they strutted circles against the stage, animal and woman, and you were grateful no one said a word. How could you have named the chill of her breasts, the terrible hot fur? It was that gift of silence which happens between strangers out of country. Then you'd walked home, tall cathedrals bristling in the baubles of their unrung bells. You'd turned your collar up against the coming cold as you turn up your jacket now, surprised by the suddenness of the season, or your own inattention to the small shifts, your breath crystal in air, and each stripe marking separation down the asphalt is lamped and glistening, eerie as snow, solstice certain as the short drive ahead to when you must walk up to your dark, quiet house, sink your key into the lock. Before dawn. So I'm gonna bastardize the German. Does anyone speak German here? So I'm gonna say the German perfectly. It's gonna be beautiful, the best accent you've ever heard. There's some Rilke's Do We Know Elegies is in here, and from his first elegy, loosely translated, it says, "A wave rolled toward you out of the distant past, or as you walked below an open window, a violin gave itself to your hearing." I know this is very academic, right? There's also some Beethoven's Es muss sein, Es muss sein. Does anyone know Beethoven's, we're at a bar. Does anyone know Beethoven's string quartet number 16 in F major? No? Hum it. No. Yeah, I have this theory that poets become poets because we really love music, but we have no musical skill. And then I saw Tanya Nichols, and I was like, fuck. Yeah, she's just the best of both worlds. There's also Italian, so Beethoven writes in the beginning, muss es sein, es muss sein. He asks, must it be, it must. This is his last this is his last string quartet before he died. And he ends it with this Italian, which has grave, ma non troppo tratto, which means slowly, seriously, but not too much. I wonder what wrecks we witness as we age. The older and older we get, the more wrecks we witness. Before dawn, 1. Almost December, and the house stiffens. Trains calling their distance. Each car sweeping some brace of memory by, and coffee loosens its warmth to my chest. A boy seems up from my childhood and Connecticut. He's bent over the bench at an old bus stop, his breath expellant, and his left hand cups over his morning work while his right hand gathers a night crawler, the pale moons of his fingernails severing the worm to two. The rest of us kids are gawking, bubbling to noise and smearing our sniffles into our mittens. But the writhing body, bright as fire in this boy's hands, is still alive. We are shocked at its life, the way one body can unlatch in the hands of another. Dawn hesitates in the beak of a clicking bird, and the memory of your stomach swims from the sheets in its glistening whiteness. They say there are more moths this year than any other. We are swatting them from our hair, our eyes, and I know when I unlock my door, I should be disturbed at their insistence, their electric fluttering. But I have held my arms too over a light, willing to burn for the sight of that one incandescence, bulb signaling the presence of someone at home, porch Morse coding messages through the fingers pulling its switch. If I dialed you now, would I remember your voice, its pattern of soft parts, flushed stresses? The boy from my first American winter is still cupping his palms over that worm, his breath-hard jet, and all the windows of home cloud over. Our mothers sweep their shadows over the front desert step. If we could only return to the moment before separation, move the bristle back to brick, glutinous half to vermicular half, your hand again to my hand, all the porches of this district could turn on like watchtowers, our half of the city sink into light. Schizophrenic morning splits, white and the changing dark, necessary suicide to shift into a day. Der Schwur gefasst Schluss, and we enter our days heavy with dreamed terrors. After showers, water streaming our hot elbows. 2. Es hob sich ein Wohlgeherren in Vergangen, oder da wo du kamst am goffenen Fenster, gab ein Geig sich hin. As I yield to you now at this window, particles of silica suspended in pain. In Paris, I spent a winter listening for the fall of a boot, the stairs cracked by carriers of corpses, and we build cities one above another, entombing our pasts. Lampshade, white archway, torn fringe, gold ring resting between cobbles. 3. Before Google, a Nietzschean signed his last letter to me, Amor Fati, and standing a train's distance from myself at this window, I can see the woman who was me tugging the gilded blue spine at the library, shivering to join the meaning of words together. I must have thought the Latin meant fatal, not so far from fate, two origins of language folding together like one body hot from bath, the other long in the sheets, their limbs quivering to average at the same temperature. Because how is to love fatally so different than to be in love with one's fate? The impossibility of a nude stomach, how a room unseams at first morning light. 4. Each violin unstitches its voice at my window. The nightingales turned orchestra. Dew shaking off cypresses as my mug slips in a sheath of sweat and condensation. Coffee dissolving in cold. And the mirage of a boy arrives, in the throat of a bird, his hands waxing white, woolless in the flurry, the care inside his thin palms as wiggling red segments. If I'd loved that boy, even if there wasn't just one boy there, centered in the parabola of kids shaking in their puffed jackets, if only in the chambers of my memory, bear him singular in the snow in Connecticut. If I've loved him better, I would have stepped through the flakes then, breathed onto his cap, his frosted lashes, peered through the pink plane of his cheek to see too the living divisions. Young, we dive our bodies into the wrecks of others' bodies. Then we age to better understand, to stand the distance. How older, calmer, we drive so slowly by car crashes, swinging our heads, mouthing poor. How we squint in robes and groups before a neighbor's smoking house, our palms pocketed, our fingernails denting the seaming, the sirens going and our spongy necks unable to lock onto spongy neck, my finger web unhinged from your finger web, and how to understand the damp collision of a stranger's body, yours, floating delicately in the sheets, the cat's eyes glistening, and the accident of my blood on your cotton, your ribs rising up and down, quiet as ghosts. Each time I enter a memory, it changes with my entrance. The boy's hands redden, and your nakedness washes like soap. And already I have lost you, your limbs locked inside that past, and the dying year sweeps the lessening sun closer to my window, glass straining in double panes, dark dividing from glowing light. All right, extra creditors, last poem. I had the best teacher here. Her name is Corinne Clegg Hales. If you get the chance to take a class or just talk to her, take a class and just talk to her. She will change your life. So this poem is called Moment in Storm, and there's an epigraph that says, photograph within a photograph on Douglas Yeats's photo of a snowstorm in the context of Yutaka Takanashi's Golden Guy Street Bar Hakata. So there's this one photo by Douglas Yates, and it's just a storm, and there's a windshield, and there's just like purple and blue, and you can tell that there's just a rainstorm happening. And then Yutaka Takanashi, he's this incredible Japanese photographer, and he has all these photographs of the Golden Guy Bar District. And it's just like almost everything is left. Like there are 8 tracks there. There's still, it's like a bar that's just been left behind. And you're like, what just happened? What emergency just happened that everyone had to leave, right? Like you can still see shoes and half-drunk beers. But the reason I mentioned Connie Hales is she has this gorgeous poem called Disappeared from a photograph by Gustave Le Gray. And it's an ekphrastic poem, a poem based on a form of art. And in her poem, she has an epigraph that says, a woman moved, so there was a blur in the center of the photograph. And I steal her line here. She says, because she cannot stop responding to the call of this world. So I steal her line because you steal from the best, and she is the best. She is. Moment in storm. Snow obscures a window. An emergency happens like this. The windshield wiper clicking and her mouth pedaling open. In a photograph by Yutaka Takanashi, a bar is just this, shy of a chanteuse crooning, dream a little dream of me. The catalog of 8 tracks pulled from recklessly. Cigarettes half smoked, the whiskey still warm. Only no one's there. All these clues of people, and no one's there. You can almost still hear the city sirens. But then there's the matter of the camera as observer. Because in order for the glimpse before apocalypse to exist, someone had to be there. Someone lingered. And you begin to wonder if you too would have stayed with your city wailing around you. The neon signs hissing and all the precious liquors in glass quivering. The enemy, flying above with his bomb, is no longer relevant. He's too far away, and you are dreaming this scenario just as driving, the blizzard begins to take over your sight. You compress the brake. The road refuses revelation, and your wife is beginning to sing to calm the children shuffling their cramped back seats. It's these times when glass condenses that Ella Fitzgerald fogs in your ear, your wife's voice heavy with stars shining up above you, her meter steady as the arc of the wiper sweeping water. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. And the sky strings its purple chords, because now your wife is really getting into it. You can see her teeth in the window as the song takes over her. Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you. Yes, and in the windshield, red smears, cars going or a signal to stop, and all your reflected faces wrinkling into snowbanks, condensation of winter and breath flat against the glass, and you can feel the storm taking over your driving to that crushing violet sky. Your wife's face familiar and watery because she cannot stop responding to the call of this world. She is the kind who in the middle of emergency will linger, a siren, singing wildly, escape now, dream a little dream of me. Thank you so much.